I've just gathered the best Gorilla Tag thumbnail videos I've ever made, and some of these I bet you've never seen before. And I've hidden my oldest video from 2 years ago somewhere in this video, so if you find it, make sure to comment and enjoy.
Today I recreated 4 Mr. Beast thumbnails in Gorilla Tag, with each one getting harder and harder, and watch till the end for a surprise. And with that, let's make the first Mr. Beast thumbnail. First thing I'm gonna do is wear a shirt and make it look orange in Photoshop. And I think this shirt looks pretty nice, and all we gotta do now is just do the posting, and I feel like City would be perfect for this. And now that the post is done, we gotta find a background for this. I think this spot right here is really good, so let's go Photoshop it. And the first thing I'm gonna do is mask out the character. Okay, it's all masked now, so I'm gonna press Ctrl X to delete the background. And now I'm gonna mask out his shirt and make it orange. There you go. Press Ctrl J to duplicate. Now I'm gonna make a new layer, get an orange brush, and just start painting like this. I know it doesn't look good right now, but to fix that, I'm gonna change the mode over here until it looks good. I think that looks pretty nice. And this looks a little bit weird. To fix that, I'm gonna do the method we did before. I think that looks pretty good. So now let's add the background. And now all I gotta do is shade the areas. And there we go. Here's the first thumbnail. Let's move on to the next thumbnail. And to make the second thumbnail, we're gonna have to go to B. Now let's do my pose. That was a pretty good pose.
Now let's get the water shot. That was a perfect picture, but we gotta take one more picture to make this thumbnail complete. And with that, let's go in Photoshop. And the first thing I'm gonna do is add the water. Second thing I'm gonna do is add the character. And of course, we have to mask him out. And I'm just gonna do that by selecting the tool up here, just drawing over his character. And if you wanna remove areas you don't want, just press Alt and click. Now I'm gonna press Ctrl J to duplicate it and just remove the background. Now there is an error right here, but to fix that, just grab the masking tool up here, just cut it out like this. And now let's add the actual raft like this. And again, I'm gonna select the mask tool, just begin masking the thing like this. Press Ctrl J to duplicate, and of course remove the background afterwards. Then I'm just gonna put the raft under the character. In this thumbnail, he's really far down. The raft is pretty big, so I'm gonna try to replicate that. And I think that looks pretty nice. And then another thing we could do is add a new image and cut out the shark. And there we go. So press Ctrl J to duplicate it and delete the background. But we have a little bit of a problem. As you can see, it doesn't look that great. But to fix that, we're just gonna mask this out. Now that I'm done masking, we're gonna have to fix this by masking around the ring. And now to fix this, we're gonna have to use the remove tool and then just drawing in the mask we just made. That looks pretty good. And now let's make the shark fin. And to do that, we're just gonna have to mask the shape of the shark fin. And I think something like this looks pretty good. And now to make this look like a shark fin, what we want to do is go to edit, content, and where fill, and then this should pop up. Just press OK. And that looks pretty good. But I'm just gonna duplicate it. And after that, press Ctrl T to make this menu pop up, and click this button right here to flip it. Press done. Now just position it right. And there we go. We fixed the shark. And now we can just copy and paste it all over the place. Now I don't want to waste your time watching this, so I'm just gonna skip to the next part. And there we go. We're now done. But it looks really weird right now. And to fix that, I'm gonna make some of the sharks more blurry by going to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. And I'm gonna do the exact same thing with other sharks, but we don't want them all to have the same amount of blur. So the ones that are bigger are gonna have less blur on them. Now all the sharks are pretty much done, but this shirt doesn't really look good right now. But to fix that, we're gonna select the remove tool over here and just draw it like this. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now I am gonna mask out the shirt. It's now all masked, and I'm gonna press Ctrl J to duplicate it. I'm gonna click down here and press Hue Saturation, then make that a clipping mask by pressing Ctrl Alt G. And now we're gonna change the hue. I think green would look really good. And of course, like in the Mr. Beast thumbnail, we're gonna add text up there. So to do that, you're gonna go to the top layer, press T. I'm just gonna scale it up a bunch like this. And that's probably it for the text. But now the thumbnail looks pretty bland right now, and that's because there's no shading or anything. So I'm gonna start out by shading all the sharks, and that looks really, really nice. Now let's go on and shade the actual monkey, like under the shirt right here. I'm gonna do the same over here, and I'm of course gonna shade the head as well. And now the actual monkey shaded, but we also gotta shade the shirt. I think that looks pretty good. So now let's shade the actual wrap, and I'm gonna do that by selecting the burn tool over here and just shade under the monkey. But this doesn't really look like a wrap. We're gonna have to mask it a bit. Something like this looks pretty nice. We don't want to have anything too crazy, but again, there's a lot of sharks around, so it would make sense if it's like really destroyed. And I think that looks really, really good. So now I'm just gonna do some small adjustments to make it look perfect. I think this is the finished thumbnail, but let's move on to the next thumbnail. For the third Mr. Beast thumbnail, all I have to do is do this. That's literally it. So let's go in Photoshop and make this thumbnail. And the first thing I'm gonna do is add the character like this. And now of course we gotta mask the character. And to do that, we're gonna go up here, press this, and now just start masking it. Once we're done masking, we're gonna press Ctrl J to duplicate the layer and then delete the layer under it. And there we go. That looks pretty nice. And now we're just gonna position the monkey. And I think this is pretty good. And now we're gonna have to add the plate behind him. So I think something like this will work perfectly. I'm just gonna line it up like this, and I think something like this looks pretty decent. But the plate behind the character looks really odd right now. And to fix that,
that, we're just gonna shade it. So I'm gonna grab the burn tool over here, just start shading it like this. And I think that looks pretty nice. So now let's add the saw. And I think this one looks pretty good, but there's a few things we gotta fix about it. Let's start out with masking the saw. There we go. Press Ctrl J to duplicate it, remove the background, and now press Ctrl U, bring up hue saturation. Let's put the saturation all the way down. There we go. And I'm gonna duplicate it again by pressing Ctrl J. Then I'm gonna add motion blur up here. I go into filter, blur, and motion blur. Put the distance a bit up. That looks pretty nice. And now we're just gonna delete the stuff we don't need from it. And now we're just gonna add a shine. And I think this shine right here looks pretty good. And now we're of course gonna add the background. And I think this background right here looks pretty good, but we just gotta shade it a bit and make it a bit darker as well. There we go. I feel like the shine is a bit too much, so I'm just gonna erase these parts right here. There we go. Looks pretty good. And now the last thing we're gonna do is add the ropes. And I think this rope right here looks pretty good, so now I'm just gonna duplicate it a bunch. And there we go. That looks pretty nice. So I'm just gonna do some finishing touches, and then we should be done. And there you go. Here's the finished thumbnail. Anyways, let's move on to the next thumbnail.
And for the last thumbnail, all I have to do again is just do this. And now all I gotta do is go in Photoshop and make this thumbnail.
And the first thing I'm gonna do is add the image. And now we're gonna mask the character. Press Ctrl J to duplicate it. I think this looks pretty good. And now all we have to do is do the background. But in order to do the background, we have to go in Blender. And the first thing we're gonna do is add the grass. And to do that, we're gonna press Shift A and then go to Mesh and then click Plane. Now we're gonna size it up a bunch like that. Now we're gonna press Tab, press A, right click, subdivide. And let's subdivide it a few times. There we go. Now click the materials properties down here. Press New, name it Grass. Click this yellow circle right here. Then click Image Texture. Press Open. Now add your texture and it should look something like this. But it looks really weird right now. And I'm gonna show you how to fix that. First, go down here. Instead of it being on linear, make it be closest in order for it to be actually pixelated. Then put IOR all the way down. And then just mess with metallic and roughness. And second thing we're gonna do, we're gonna press Tab, press A, go to UV editing, and scale this up a bunch. And now you can see that the texture is way bigger. Now we're gonna add a camera by clicking Shift A and then camera. Now click this camera icon up here to go in camera view. Now you gotta press view, navigation, and walk navigation. Now keep being in camera view, click the plane, press tab, grab the knife tool over here, and now let's form the scenery like this. And now the next thing we're gonna do, and now we're gonna select the faces right here like that. We're gonna press E and move it down. Now we're gonna move it a bit to the right. And now we're gonna select all of these parts right here. And we're gonna press U and Q projection. And now we're gonna add a new material by pressing plus over here. And then we're gonna do the exact same thing we did before. And once we're done with that, we're gonna press assign. And what that's gonna do is gonna change every texture we selected in edit mode. So now let's add the coffin. And I think something like this looks pretty good. So now let's render it and add it to Photoshop. And I think this looks pretty good. But now let's shade the areas. So we're gonna select the burn tool over here and just start shading like this. And I think this looks pretty good. So now let's shade the background. But before we do that, I'm just gonna mask every single part of the background. Press Ctrl J to duplicate the layer. And we're just gonna repeat that step with the grass and dirt. So I'm gonna start out by shading the grass. And just shade the edges like this. So it kind of blends in with the dirt. I think that looks pretty good. Now we're gonna shade the dirt. There we go. Now we just gotta shade the coffin. And I think this looks pretty good. Also, comment down below which thumbnail you think it was the best. And if you can get me to 10,000 subscribers, I'm gonna make the best thumbnail tutorial on Gorilla Tag. So if you wanna become better at thumbnails, make sure to subscribe. I've seen so many clickbait videos on the new Halloween update in Gorilla Tag, but what if they were actually real? So I'm going to make fake Halloween update concepts like turning forest scary, making new cool cosmetics, and a new creepy ghost. But there's a super huge surprise I'm doing at the end of this video, so you'll have to wait and see. Anyways, let's start with making forest scary. And first thing, we're gonna add the background and mask out the grass to make it look orange. And once done, we're gonna select the layer we masked the grass on. Then we're gonna go to filter, camera raw filter, and now we're gonna change the hue. And there we go, we now have fall grass and it looks pretty good. Now to really get that Halloween vibe, we're gonna have to add fog. To do that, we're gonna go down here, select the top layer, and press the plus down here to make a new layer. Once we've done that, we're gonna mess around with the settings up here. And now we're gonna select our fog color. In this case, it's gonna be this kind of greenish color. Just gonna draw it like this. And to make it look even more realistic, we're gonna make a new layer again. Then go to filter, render, and clouds. And what that's gonna do is create this kind of cloudy look. But if you scale it up a little bit, it should look more like fog. And now we're gonna change the mode down here to the point where it looks good. I think color dodge looks pretty good. But now let's erase the parts we don't need. So in this case, I don't want the grass to be too foggy. And there we go. Now we're done with that. And next one we're gonna add is a giant skull over here instead of the pumpkin. But in order to get the giant skull, we have to go in Blender. Now I don't really like how the jaw is down here, so I'm just gonna select all the faces of the lower jaw. I'm also gonna move it a bit up. And I think something like this looks pretty good. And now to add the skull into the game, we're just gonna drag and drop it in here. But it's a bit too bright right now. And to fix that, we're gonna go to image, adjustments, and brightness contrast. And just put that down a bit. And next thing we're gonna do is add a bit of cobweb up here, because I feel like that could make it more spooky. And to do that, we're gonna select the background, we're gonna make a new layer, and then mask out the spots we want to make spiderweb on. And now to actually make the spiderweb, we're gonna select the brush tool over here, put the opacity and flow all the way up, and then put the hardness a bit up. I think something like that is pretty good. And now we're just gonna draw the spider web and just copy and paste that all over the place. But they don't look that realistic. And to fix that, we're just gonna shade them. So get your brush tool over here, put that opacity down, and put the flow down as well. And then put hardness all the way down. Something like that looks pretty good. And there we go, that looks pretty good. And another thing we could do is making the stump really destroyed. So to do that, we're just gonna mask the stump like usual. And once we're done masking, we're gonna press Ctrl J to duplicate it. Now we're just gonna start shading the stump like a lot. Now to really make it look destroyed, we're gonna cut out parts of the branches. Now to actually get rid of the branch, we're gonna press edit and content aware fill. And that should remove half of the branch. And we're now just gonna do that for the rest of the stump. And there we go. Now we just gotta shade this stump a little bit more to make it look extra realistic. There we go. I also feel like we could shade the skull a bit. Something like that looks pretty good. I also feel like I could add a blood river right here. Kind of like the pond in the Naros update, but just instead of water, it's gonna be blood. So I'm just gonna mask it out like that. Get a red brush up here and just start painting it like this and add a bit of detail. Then I'm gonna change the mode up here until it looks good. And I think that looks pretty good. But just in case, I'm gonna shade the river like this, just to make it a bit more realistic. And next thing we could do is add a coffin right here, like that. But we of course gotta shade it. Like that looks pretty good. But just to make it even more scary, I'm just gonna add some blood around it. I ended up making it look green because I feel like it stands more out. And last thing we're gonna do is add Matt the Bat up here. And there we go. I think this looks pretty good. Well, let's move on and make the cosmetics. And for the first cosmetic, we're gonna do a skeleton arm. I'm not gonna mask the character. There we go. And now we're gonna remove half of his arm. And what I mean by that is just completely getting rid of his arm. I'm also gonna make it like a bit chunky because his arm is gonna be like gone. I'm now also gonna add a bit of gold. I think that's pretty good. But now let's give it a bit more depth. We're gonna make a new layer. And now we're just gonna draw around it like this. And now to make it more realistic, we're just gonna have to shade it with the burn tool. And I think that looks pretty good. And now we're gonna add the actual skeleton arm. I think that's good. But we of course gotta shade it. Also gonna make sure to make it a bit dark as well. Just give it that realistic look. And just for the fun of it, I'm gonna add a bit of blood to it. Just to make it a bit more realistic. And there we go. That's the first cosmetic, which is the skeleton arm. But let's move on to the next cosmetic, which is gonna be the scarecrow bundle. So the first thing I'm gonna do is make this a jacket. And I'm gonna do that by masking out the shirt. And once we're done masking, we're gonna press Ctrl J, duplicate it. The shirt should be masked like this. Now, second thing I'm gonna do, I found this red pattern right here that I think could match really well with the shirt. But it doesn't look that good right now. And really, all we have to do, mask out the inside shirt like this. And then when we're done, the mask should look something like this. Now we're just gonna do the same but with the arms. Now that I'm done with the shirt, I'm gonna have to shade it a bit to make it look more realistic. And now the next thing we're gonna add is stray. That's coming out of the shirt to make it look even more like a scarecrow. We now added the stray, but it doesn't look that realistic right now. And to fix that, we're just gonna have to shade it. I now added the scarecrow mask, but it doesn't look that realistic right now. So I'm gonna have to liquefy it a bit by going to filter and liquefy. And I think that looks a little bit more realistic, but I'm of course gonna shade it as well. And here's the scarecrow bundle, and I think it looks pretty cool. So let's move on to the next cosmetic, which is the scythe. But in order to actually get the scythe, we have to make the scythe. So I'm gonna make a new layer, put the opacity and flow all the way up, then put the smoothing a bit up as well. I'm just gonna draw a line like this. And now all we have to do is just shade the thing, and then we're done. That's literally it. I think something like this looks pretty good. But to make it look more like Gorilla Tag, we're gonna have to mask it. And there we go. I think that looks pretty good. And now let's pixelate the textures. Like on the filter, pixelate, and mosaic. And there we go. That looks pretty good. So now let's make the next cosmetic, which is probably the coolest cosmetic by far. And to make this cosmetic, we're gonna press this button down here, then select hue saturation, scroll down, press colorize, make it this kind of green color right here. Now double click the layer, go to inner shadow, and select outer glow. Something like that looks pretty cool. Select both layers like this. Now put the fill down just a tiny bit. Now double click the layer again and mess with the outer glow setting. Now add inner glow, and there we go. I think that looks pretty good. I really like this phantom kind of look. But let's move on to making the ghost. And for this one, we're gonna have to be in Blender. And the first thing we're gonna do is press Shift A and add the cube. Then we're gonna position it to the arm because that's the first thing we're gonna make. And then after that, we're gonna press Tab to go in edit mode. Now we're gonna select the top face of the mesh and scale it down. Now we're gonna move the random vertices to make it look like clothes. Now we're gonna extrude the top face to build up a sleeve. And now we're gonna move the vertices to a random position to make it look like clothes. Now I'm just gonna duplicate the mesh and make a black material. And now I'm gonna make a new cube and form it out so it looks like a coat. Now I'm gonna extrude the bottom to make it really look like a Reaper. I'm also gonna extrude the top to make it have a hood. And now I'm gonna fill in the empty spaces to make it look even more like a Reaper. I'm also gonna make it more skinny because it doesn't really look like a Reaper right now. I'm also gonna make it a bit more realistic because it feels way too blocky right now. And now I'm gonna add the black material to it and make the sleeves a bit more realistic. And here's the finished Reaper. But now let's go in the real Gorilla Tag Halloween update and compare it with my fake Halloween update.
This is Gorilla Tag's version of the map, and this is my version of the map. And I think I won that pretty easily. Now, I did predict that this was gonna come in the shop. They also added whatever this is, and they also added this. I don't know why they would add that. So I think that my cosmetic concepts were a bit better than these, but you can decide on your own in the comments down below. And now, sadly, they didn't add a new ghost, but my concept was pretty cool. So I guess we'll have to wait next year until they they add the Grim Reaper. Today, I recreated 4 Ryan Trahan thumbnails in Gorilla Tag, with each one getting harder and harder. And at the end of this video, I'm showing you guys 3 tips on how to make your thumbnails pop even more. So stay tuned for that. Anyways, let's start out with the easiest thumbnail, which is gonna be the first thumbnail of the Penny series.
And we're now in Blender, and the first thing I'm gonna do is add the grass. So I'm gonna press Shift A, add a mesh, which is gonna be the cube, scale it up a bit, then I'm gonna move it down. I'm gonna add the grass texture as well by pressing new and adding the image texture. And there we go. We now added the grass, but it doesn't really look like grass right now. And to fix that, we're gonna go to UV editing and size up the UV. So we're now done with the grass, and next thing I'm gonna do is position the character right. And after I'm done with this, now what I'm gonna do is go in camera view and position the camera. And once we're done with that, we're gonna position the character. So we're gonna go in post mode and just rotate the head a bit. We could also add a face expression to him. There we go. And I honestly think this is good for the Blender part. So let's move on to Photoshop. The first thing I'm gonna do is add the penny right here. And I'm just gonna use this one right here and copy that into Photoshop. And I'm gonna scale it down a bit, position it right. I'm gonna get the penny a bit of shadow. Then I'm gonna give it a bit of vibrance. And then I'm gonna add the text and scale it up a bit and rotate it slightly. Now I'm gonna add some stroke and shadows to it. And then we should be done. And there we go. Here's the first thumbnail. So let's move on to thumbnail number 2, which is gonna be Ryan Trahan flying in the plane. And for this thumbnail, we actually have to do a bit of modeling. But I'm just gonna simplify it and not make it too advanced. I'm gonna press Shift A and then add a plane. Then I'm gonna go in X view and rotate this up. Then I'm gonna move it a bit forward, scale it up. Then I'm gonna cut out the window by pressing tab to go in edit mode. Then I'm gonna select the knife tool over here and just cut the holes like this. Once we're done cutting, we're gonna press enter. Then I'm gonna press P and selection. And then I'm just gonna hide this object. I'm just gonna move this a bit more to the right. And now what we could do is position the character. So we're gonna select the rig and press Control Tab to go in post mode. And now we're just gonna position it. I'm gonna rotate his body slightly. And then I'm gonna rotate his head as well. And move the body a bit down. Now I'm gonna select his hand and move it up. Now I'm gonna go in camera view and rotate the hand. Now the positioning of the monkey is done. It looks pretty good. And now we're gonna paint the plane. So we're gonna start off by pressing tab and press A to select all the vertices. Then we're gonna press U and cube protection. Then we're gonna go in UV editing and then just move this up a bit. There we go. Then we're gonna make a new texture by pressing new over here. And then I'm just gonna name it plane and change the color to this kind of blue look. There we go. I'm gonna scale the textures down to 264 by 264 and press OK. Now I'm gonna click object mode up here and then select texture paint. And that's gonna allow us to draw on the texture. So now I'm gonna select this kind of purple color and paint around the edges like this. Then we're gonna draw these like little lines right here and make it straight just like that and just give it a bit more detail. And now we can add these dots all over the place. And I just finished the second row of dots, but I'm just gonna give them a bit of detail. And I'm also gonna extend the lines and dots over here. And now I'm gonna add the bottom layer of dots. And I'm also gonna add these big dots like right here. And I'm not done with the dots, but I feel like I can add a bit of detail. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna select the base color and make it a bit darker. Then I'm gonna put the strength down and just paint like this. And we're now pretty much done. But one last thing I have to do is add some kind of logo down here. And I think this is good for the Blender part. So let's go in Photoshop. And all I really need to do for this thumbnail is add like a plain background, just like in this thumbnail. And I feel like a background like this looks pretty good. So let's copy that and put that into Photoshop. And there we go. That looks pretty nice. And now all there's left to do is add the 1-star review. Now I'm gonna add a bit of vibrance and then we should be done. And there we go. I think that looks pretty good. So let's move on to the next thumbnail. And this is the thumbnail I'm going to recreate and it looks really sick. So the first thing I have to do is position my character over here, move him really close to the camera, put him a bit down, just rotate him. There we go. Now we have to position the character. We're gonna click the rig and press Control Tab. There we go. Now I'm gonna position the head, rotate it just like that. Now we have to position the hand. So I'm gonna move it up like that. There we go. Something like that looks pretty good. Now we have to move this weird looking thing to move the arm. And there we go. Now I'm gonna position the fingers like that. Next thing I'm gonna do is add a blue light to it. So we're gonna press Shift A and add a line. Now what we're gonna do is change the color to this blue. I can add one to the head as well. And I'm now done with the hand. And I think I can add one to the head as well. So I'm gonna duplicate that one, move it to the head. There we go. And now all there's left to do for the Blender part is just add the VR headset. So I'm gonna go on Sketchfab. Then I'm gonna search Quest 3. Okay, so I couldn't find anything on Sketchfab. We'll have to find it on Google. And I think this image right here will work perfectly. So I'm just gonna save that image and let's get in Photoshop. And we're now in Photoshop. The first thing I'm gonna do is add a black background. Then what I'm gonna do is shade that background. Put it nicely like that. Then I'm gonna pick this light blue color and just paint it around the edges like this. And once you're done with that, I'm gonna extrude it like this. And there we go. That looks pretty good. And now I'm gonna add some dust particles to the background. This one looks pretty good, so I'm gonna copy it into Photoshop. But I feel like there's a bit too much dust. So to fix
fix that, I'm gonna select the eraser tool over here and just erase the parts I don't want. Something like that looks pretty good. Now we're gonna shade highlights to the character. We're gonna make a new layer. Press Ctrl-Alt-G to make a clipping mask. I'm gonna select the brush tool over here. Also gonna shade the arm like this. There we go. Now I'm gonna put the layer mode to screen because I feel that it looks way better for highlight. And now we're gonna add particles to the hand. And we're now done with the particles. Next thing we have to do is add the text. We're gonna press T, add the white text, type in real life. There we go. And the next thing we have to do is add the VR headset. So I've got it right here, and now I just need to position it. And I think this positioning is good, but we have to fix the strap. I'm gonna mask them out just like this. Press Ctrl-X to delete them. There we go. And now I just have to fix this. And there we go. Now all I have to do is just shade the headset and add a bit of highlight. There we go. And now let's add a bit of vibrance. Here's the final thumbnail. So let's move on to the last thumbnail. And remember, at the end of this video, I'm showing you 3 tips on how to improve your thumbnails. So keep watching if you want to know how to do that. And this is the last thumbnail I'm going to recreate, and it's gonna be the hardest one yet. And the first thing we have to add is gonna be the grass. So I'm gonna press Shift A and add a cube. I'm gonna scale this cube down and position it down as well. I'm gonna scale it up even more. There we go. Now I'm gonna add the grass texture. I'm gonna make a new material, name it grass, and then I'm gonna add the grass texture. And again, it doesn't look like grass. So instead of having it unlinear, I'm gonna put it to closest. Just gonna make it more pixelated instead of blurry. Then I'm gonna go in UV editing, select all the faces, and press S to scale up. And it looks way more like grass now. Next thing we're gonna do is make the actual sewer part. So I'm gonna select the cube and then press tab. Then I'm gonna select the knife tool down here and just start cutting this thing. There we go. Then I'm gonna select all the lines right here. Then I'm gonna go in Y view and then press E to extrude them down. And now it's gonna look like we're actually in the ground. And I'm just gonna move the camera a bit closer. And now we're gonna position the character. So his body's gonna go down. His head is gonna be tilted like this. His hand is gonna be up here. And I'm just gonna move his arm now. And now I gotta move his other hand. And that right there looks pretty good. And now I'm gonna add the sewer. And I'm just gonna scale it down a bit and get the right position. There we go. For the background, I think I'm gonna go with the rock wall from Forest. So I'm gonna press Shift A and add a plane. Then I'm gonna go in X view and rotate it up. And now I'm gonna go in Y view and just scale this up. Then I'm gonna make a new texture, call it wall, and add the image for it. But it looks a bit weird right now. And to fix that, we're gonna have to go in UV editing. I'll press A, scale this down, and move it up here. There we go. But I feel that it blends a bit with the sewer cover. So I'm just gonna change the hue of the sewer cover. And let's see how it looks. And there we go. That looks really good. And it also looks like the one from the real thumbnail. I feel like I should change the position of the hand and make him have a shush position. And I feel like this is good for the blender part. So let's go in Photoshop. And the first thing I'm gonna do is mask out the character. There we go. It's all masked now. So I'm gonna take the burn tool over here and just start shading it like this. There we go. And I feel like the shading is pretty much done for the background. But now I also gotta shade the actual character. Just gonna start by shading out the shadows like this. Then I'm gonna shade the highlights over here. I feel like I could also add highlights to the sewer cover. So I'm just gonna go do that right now. And yeah, that looks way better. And now what I'm gonna do is to add the secret logo right there. And there we go. Here's the last thumbnail. And comment down below which thumbnail you think was the best. And as I promised, I'm gonna show you guys 3 tips on how to improve your thumbnails. And the first effect that I'm going to show you is called the glow effect. And to achieve this effect, you're gonna double click your layer. And this little menu should pop up. Then you're gonna press auto glow. Now what you wanna do is put the opacity up to like around 70. Then you're gonna put your size up and put the range all the way up. And then you have a nice looking glow. And now for the second effect, it's actually shadows. On this thumbnail right here, I added shadows to the background because without it, it looked so weird. Without and with. And now I'm gonna show you guys how to achieve this effect. You're gonna double click your layer again, and then you're gonna select drop shadow. And I just like doing random settings because I feel like it's gonna give you the best result. And now for the last effect, which is the most important one, it's gonna be vibrance. Let me show an example of what vibrance could do. This is without vibrance, but when you put vibrance on, it looks so much better. Now to achieve vibrance, you're gonna go to image, adjustments, and vibrance. And it should be right here.
Oh shit! Holy shit! Whoa! I have my mug. I can smash it in his face. Okay, go, 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 go! What the fuck? Oh, he's going up here. He's going up here. Holy! Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa! Holy shit! He got kicked! He got kicked! Get out of here! Get out of here! He got kicked!
I'm going to make a thumbnail while only being in VR, and I have to use my keyboard and mouse without being able to see them. And the first step in order to make the thumbnail is linking my VR to my PC. And to do that, we're gonna use this wonderful app called Virtual Desktop. But before we do any kind of photoshopping, we have to get some in-game pictures. Now for the actual posing of the thumbnail, it's gonna be me like over here, holding the headset like this. Perfect pose right there. I think it would be perfect if I did it in the virtual arcade. Arcade? I mean stump. What am I saying? Here are the pictures that I chose. And now let's move on to step number 3.
which is gonna be Photoshop. And the first thing I'm gonna do is add the image into Photoshop. And of course, as usual, the first step is to mask out the character. There we go. Press Ctrl J to duplicate it. I'm gonna delete the old thing. And I don't think this background is gonna work. So I'm just gonna be a little bit sneaky and copy the image from me and Jamin's DMs. And then I'm just gonna position it in Photoshop. Yeah, that looks terrible. And now the next thing I'm gonna add is the Quest 3S headset. So I'm gonna search up Quest 3S. And now I'm just gonna find the image that would work. Oh, this image is perfect. I'm gonna copy that, slam that in Photoshop. I'm gonna remove the background. And now I'm just gonna mask out this because I don't think I'll need it. And I'm gonna mask it like that. Now I'm gonna scale up the image. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now I'm just gonna mask out the fingers to make it look like I'm actually grabbing the headset. But thing is, my battery could run out at any second, which would be terrible because then I couldn't finish the thumbnail. Once we're done masking, we're gonna press Ctrl J to duplicate it. We're gonna enable this layer again, but just put it down here. And there we go. I'm now holding the Quest 3S. And oh my, it looks low quality. I might have to image upscale that. Anyways, next thing I'm gonna do is add a little mask right here to make it look like he's kind of like going into the floor like you would in Gorilla Tag. I'm gonna mask it like that. There we go. Very nice. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and do the shading. First, let's start off with the character. Get the burn tool right here. I'm gonna make sure to shade the dark areas like this. Make it look more realistic.
And yes, I said it again. And I don't care how many times I'm gonna say it. So please stop making fun of me in the comments like you did on the last video I made, which you should watch, by the way. And if I see one more comment making fun of me, I will find you.
Down here would be pretty good as well. Slightly under his head and up here. Also gonna shade the other arm. And now all I have to shade is the hand. Now I'm gonna add a bit of highlights. That always makes the renders look really nice. Now what I'm gonna do is shade the VR headset just right here. And now I'm gonna double click the layer and this should pop up. Next thing I'm gonna do is add an outer glow to the headset. Put the range all the way up. And now I'm gonna add a drop shadow. And I'm gonna switch the blend mode to linear dodge and change the color to this kind of blue. And what this does is making the VR headset look like it's turned on. And I think that is pretty good, yeah. But now let's of course add a bit of shading. But this time I'm gonna make the shading in kind of this like light blue color. Put it under here just to give it a little more detail. Now another thing I could do is making these cameras right here glow green. And now I'm gonna add a green glow to it. And now I'm just gonna turn the fill a bit down. And then what I'm gonna do is add a bit of highlights to the fingers just to make it look like the green is actually reflecting on the fingers. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna add a bit of shadows to the background because it really needs it. And I honestly think this looks pretty good so far. But I do see a bit of dead space right here. But I'm just gonna do some small adjustments to make it look even better. And the first adjustment I'm gonna do is adding particles. And I feel like the first particle I could do is make like a shine to the cameras. And so far it looks pretty good. But I'm just gonna add some more particles to make it look even better. And I also added this kind of flame effect. And it makes it look so much better. Now I added this kind of glow effect coming from the headset, which makes it look way more cool. And now the last thing I'm gonna add to this thumbnail is a bit of camera raw. And there we go. That looks really good. And that's really it for this thumbnail. By the way, let me know in the comments what you think about this thumbnail. And at 10k subscribers, I'm gonna make a thumbnail tutorial. So if you wanna become better at thumbnails, make sure to subscribe.
Anyways, please go watch my other video and don't comment anything dumb. I am a Gorilla Tag thumbnail designer, and I have a list of 5 famous Gorilla Tag thumbnails that I'm going to recreate today. Starting with thumbnail 1 with 11 million views.
I'm gonna start off by doing the J-Man pose. Now that that's done, we gotta do the second part of the thumbnail. Okay, now that we've done the pose, we gotta do the actual thumbnail.
First thing first, I have to mask this character. I'm gonna mask this character too. There we go. And now I'm gonna put text behind the character just like in the J-Man thumbnail. There we go. I'm gonna just start shading like this. Now that shading is done, I wanna add some vibrance like that. That looks good. And now I'm gonna make the grass green. There we go. Now all I gotta do is add a shadow behind the monkey. And there we go. Here's the first thumbnail. Now let's move on to the next thumbnail.
Now this one's gonna be pretty easy because all I really gotta do is post it like that. And now I just gotta do a pose.
Alright, we're now in Photoshop. I'm gonna start off by masking my own character. There we go. All masked. I'm gonna put all the PNGs in now. There we go. All there's left to do now is add the shading. Just do that. And there we go. Here's the second thumbnail done. So let's move on to the next thumbnail.
And now for the third thumbnail, we actually have to do it in Blender.
Okay, we're now in Blender. And for this thumbnail, I'm gonna recreate Elliot's thumbnail. So let's make the environment first. Okay, we're now done with the environment. Now let's do all the posing. Now everything in Blender is done. So let's move on to Photoshop. I'm now in Photoshop. And now I have to mask the character. I now mask all the characters. So let's do the shading. Shading right there. There we go. Now it's all done. So let's move on to the next thumbnail.
The fourth thumbnail is from Cabbage, where he's playing Gorilla Tag but realistic. So for the thumbnail, I'm thinking of
putting a camera angle like this, then just putting my hand like this. The rest I just have to do in Photoshop. So let's go make the thumbnail.
We're now in Photoshop, and I'm gonna start off by adding the image, and then mask the character like this. And then I'm gonna add the text that says real life. There we go, all done. Now I just gotta get better grass. There we go, looks good. Now I just gonna do shading, just like that. And now all I have to do is small adjustments. And there we go, it's all done. Also, comment down below which thumbnail you think is the best so far. And with that, let's move on to the last thumbnail.
Now for the last thumbnail, I gotta do 3 different poses. The background may be a little different, but it doesn't matter. So now let's go make the thumbnail.
We're now in Photoshop, and here's the thumbnail I'm gonna recreate. And now I'm gonna import all the images. I'm gonna start out by masking all the characters, and now all I gotta do is shade them. There we go, now all the monkeys are shaded. All I gotta do now is add the text. Here's the first text done, now the second text is done, and there we go, here's the last thumbnail. I hope you've learned something today. All the PSDs for the thumbnails will be in the description. Also, if you liked the video, consider subscribing or just leaving a like.